Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Derek here.
And Jason. Derek, how are you?
It's a big day. I'm doing well.
It is a big day. You're $1 poorer, though,
Yep.
because Vanessa Bryant has won a $16 million. You're $2 poorer. Vanessa Bryant has won a $16 million verdict, as has her co-plaintiff, Chris Chester, won a $15 million verdict. That's roughly $2 from every citizen of the county of Los Angeles, which you and I are both of.
Yep.
They won these amounts in their lawsuit against the Los Angeles County Sheriff and the Los Angeles County Fire Department, ruling that they had two things. Number one, that they had wrongfully taken, actually snapped photographs of Kobe Bryant's dead body, and then they had shared them with a close group of people. We're not exactly sure how many, a couple dozen people, 8 officers.
Yeah, some at a bar, some to family
Well, they
friends.
shared them, yeah. So they 8 officers had taken the photos, and then it had been spread around to sort of an unknown number of people, but within a relatively small community of firefighters and friends and whatnot at a bar.
Yes. Apparently deleted now and no further spread.
So I think it's really important that we understand what this lawsuit was about. This lawsuit had nothing to do, there were no damages paid. The $31 million in damages to Vanessa Bryant and Chris Chester had nothing to do with the taking of the photographs or the dissemination of the photographs. The claim was that they suffered, Vanessa Bryant and Chris Chester suffered emotional distress because of the fear that the photographs would leak to the broader community.
That was the largest chunk of their damages, was the future potential harm that they might suffer.
So two things. Number one, the past fear that they have suffered between the time that they learned about it,
which was a very small
amount,
part of the damages.
and then the future. So Vanessa Bryant is effectively saying, I, for the rest of my life, will live in fear that these photos will get out to the public.
Yes.
And the jury said, we're going to give you, I think, 14 of the $16 million, something like that, $16 million effectively, because you have to live in fear of their dissemination. They haven't been disseminated publicly.
There's sort of a sword of Damocles dangling over her that may drop at any time. And she says, I live in constant fear that my daughters, my surviving daughters, may someday have to experience seeing their loved ones from the wreckage.
Yes.
And that fear.
And the county argued in response, look, we've done everything. Terrible apologies. It was awful what happened.
Discipline the officers.
Discipline the officers. We have done everything we can to make sure all these photos are deleted, and we are not aware that any copy of this photo exists anywhere, although in this digital age it probably does somewhere, but we're not aware of it. We've done our best to decide. And it's never come out in the 3 years since he's died. He died in January of 20, so 2.5 years since he's died. None of these photos have been released. Therefore, you really don't have that great of a fear to anything to really be afraid of, because we think they're all gone. We're not aware that any still exist, and it hasn't come out in 2.5 years. When it would have come out, maybe somebody on the internet would have thought about making money off of them. All that is now past.
And they also they said the trauma you're feeling is the trauma of your daughter and your husband dying in a helicopter crash. It is not the trauma of these photographs. And they had to be pretty sharp with that in there, which is an uncomfortable moment. You know, they had to press her on the stand and say, the source of your trauma is their death, not this incident, although this incident was awful and we disciplined the officers. So they were trying to thread the needle a bit.
And in an interesting incident that didn't make much news, the LA County, in defending this, asked for her to turn over her psychological records, believing that when she was speaking with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, she was not as fearful as she claimed to be in her lawsuit. She was not suffering quite as much as she claimed. Now, the court, and I think rightfully so, rejected that and said people have a right to privacy and a legally recognizable right to not have their psychological records turned over, and rejected that. It was an interesting play by LA County, and I think it was maybe more for the public, because I don't think they ever really believed they were going to get the records.
I think that's exactly right. They wanted to show the effort to get at these records and make it sort of uncomfortable for Vanessa to push this case forward.
Yes.
But it didn't work. And Vanessa kept plowing ahead and went to a jury trial, which was very, very smart, because juries play on emotions, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is a very emotional case. Kobe
and
Bryant
what they did was so awful. Taking and distributing these pictures, horrendous.
Horrendous. And the officers should be fired. And what they did was egregious, beyond the pale. That is separate and apart from the civil lawsuit that she filed, because it could have been done in a different way, in my mind. You know, Vanessa Bryant is not someone who is hard up for cash. Kobe Bryant left behind a lot of money. He had a
nine-figure estate, hundreds of millions of dollars that he left behind.
So she could have sued for nominal damages just to make a civil symbolic gesture that what these officers did was wrong. I want their faces on the stand. I want to press them. I want to embarrass them.
I want them fired.
I want them fired.
I want to sue them individually for their wrongful acts, to make them feel pain for what they did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want change. And that is maybe an effective means to press the county into, more rigorous hiring practices, more rigorous policies to control their deputies when they're on a crash scene. What she did was go for a huge damages award. And the county is certainly not happy that their officers did this, and now has to shell out a bunch of money. But who shells out that money? Taxpayers. She sued the taxpayers. And for me, the part that was missing in the coverage of the case is, I think what Vanessa suffered and what the Chester family suffered was horrendous. But the collection of a large sum of damages from the public who had nothing to do with what went down just seemed strange to me. I don't want to push it too far.
I don't want to push it too far either, because I think at the base of this, we all, obviously the loss of her family was horrific, and what these officers did and the firefighters did by distributing this, I can't even say how outrageous it is. It's indefensible, and it's outrageous. But then you have to ask, what is the proper remedy? And this is where it's getting. What is the proper remedy for the harm that she suffered at the hand of the officers, and not forgetting about the crash, but just at the hand of these LA County officials? What's the proper remedy for a woman who's worth a few $100 million?
And those deputy wrongdoers are not paying $16 million.
They're not
just
paying
so
anything.
Everyone understands. They're not paying anything. They are immunized by virtue of they were working in their official capacity, and they were not sued personally to come into their pocket and pay these damages. The county was.
Instead, the county was, and by the county, this money comes out of the funds allocated to the Los Angeles County Sheriff and the Los Angeles County firefighters. All that money is now not there to fight crime and fight fires, and so they will now go back to the LA County Council and say, we need a reimbursement of the full $16 million that we paid to Vanessa Bryant, $31 million in total. We need that reimbursed, and that comes out of the general fund, which is the taxpayers' fund. So there is something awful about taxpayers paying this for the wrongs of these officers. Now, that said, and this is a point that Harvey pressed me on yesterday, we have situations where somebody is wrongfully killed by a police officer, or beaten,
or hit by a city bus.
And there are lawsuits all the time the city pays.
This is very common.
So really what's distinguishing this from that is, in this case, I think maybe we buy the... Are we saying that we don't believe that the injury is as great? Are we ultimately saying that this fear of release is not as great as when you lose a loved one to a rogue officer who kills somebody in the streets or something?
I think the types... I see it as the types of damages... the harms for which you can recover damages from the county are more circumscribed than they are for general civil liability. And to me, the types of harm that she was, articulating, because such a large portion was this future speculative harm, I think you have to protect the county and the taxpayers from those types of damages, because where does it end?
Yes.
Where does it really end?
Right.
This is if the past harm is a huge bucket, when someone is killed, a loved one is killed by a city bus, they should collect damages from the city if the driver was, negligent or wrong in some sense. But it doesn't,
but if that same person
it's hard
says,
without sounding callous, but she hasn't suffered those future harms.
Yes.
And even by admission of her own lawyers and making the argument, those are future potential harms.
Theoretical harms. They're not even something we know is going to happen. She could be fine in a couple of years. She could she could be fine.
Yes. Now, she's saying she's anguished by the idea, the anxiety of the future harm. So there is some present manifestation of the unrealized harm. But if we start awarding damages against the county from taxpayers for those types of harms, I think it spirals quickly out of control. You really need to rein in sort of the types of damages you can recover from a city that hires hundreds of thousands of public officials, and some of them do rogue things, and they should be disciplined. And this is not Jason and I trying to sound callous about what actually harm was occasioned upon the Chesters and Vanessa Bryant, but the types of damages she's able to recover in this emotional onslaught of a trial. Jury trials are very emotional. They're not bodies that just apply the law soberly, reason without passion. It is all passion in a jury trial. And so I think it ran a little bit amok, as sad as the situation was.
I got to tell you, I hate to button it on this, but I'm kind of outraged. I'm kind of outraged that she went for it. Taylor Swift, when she was...
What do you feel about the Chesters?
Less outraged.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are. I don't know what their money is. Maybe they're very wealthy also.
I don't think they're as wealthy as the Bryants, I would say.
But I feel less outraged. I don't know who they are. I don't know their story. I don't know what they've suffered.
Let me ask you one more question. What if Vanessa Bryant takes the $16 million and donates it to some sort of cause? Do you feel better?
I feel better about it. I wish she would have said that 2 years ago when this whole thing was first percolating up. And also, you had situations. Taylor Swift's the most obvious one, but there are many, many other people, celebrities and other wealthy people who have come forward and said, I'm bringing this to make a point, which she has said.
Without question.
And therefore, I'm only going to take $1 in damages, or therefore, I'm going to donate the entire amount, whatever I win, to charity. She's never said that.
Yes.
And you think she would have.
Yes. We give a lot of flack to Taylor Swift, but I thought the way she handled that $1 of damages for the guy who grabbed her, she was cognizant of the optics of pressing a lawsuit, using public resources to press a trial and really shame this guy and said, you know what, I'm mega, mega wealthy. I don't need to collect damages over this. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see now that she's won the award, one, whether there'll be some sort of appeal and it'll get whittled down.
I'm sure there will be.
And two, how she handles the damages award and what the public's response to it. Because this is our read of it, but I'm not sure the public follows along. I think most people would see us as callous for even questioning the idea of pursuing these damages. So we'll see.
Yep. All right. Speaking of callous things, we have Sylvester Stallone and Jennifer Flavin getting a divorce. And
he's one of my heroes.
He's one of your heroes. I was about to hit on this. So your favorite movie of all time is Rocky. You love nothing more than a rags to riches story, a legitimate rags to riches story. You love nothing more. You don't like it when Bono does it.
No.
But you love it when Sly Stallone does it. And in Rocky 1 and I think Rocky 2 are two of your favorite movies ever. The most interesting part of this is tattoo, right? He has a tattoo for years of his wife, Jennifer Flavin, on his shoulder.
A big tattoo. Not a subtle, just her name somewhere. He's got her entire face because the marriage to Jennifer Flavin in 1997, I mean, Sly Stallone always dated like very tall models, and she is statuesque, beautiful. So he, of course, emblazoned her on his shoulder. Things apparently hit some sort of rocky patch because he said
rocky patch.
He said he wanted to get it touched up. He's always maintained that I went in to freshen up because tattoos fade over time, and it's a color tattoo and so forth.
His skin is not quite what it was.
Skin, maybe some of her features started to move in different directions. He wanted to freshen it up. He said the refreshing went terribly wrong, and they needed to just cover her face with a dog. Now, the dog is interesting because yesterday a story came out that
hold on. Go ahead. No, so the dog is a pit bull or Rottweiler,
yes.
Right? And
that apparently he wanted and Jennifer Flavin didn't.
Initially, stories came out that was just like, just turn your face into a dog, and it looked like the dog Butkus from the Rocky movies.
Very famous dog from Rocky.
But then later it came out.
Yeah, if you look really closely, there's a human eye underneath the dog's jowl. I guess this is a snout area, and it's Jennifer Flavin's eye. So he had covered her face with the dog tattoo, which is a very pointed message, especially in the context of the divorce filing. So people speculated, wow, that's the deepest cut I've ever seen. Remember Johnny Depp covered Winona Forever with Wino Forever? That seemed crazy at the time. This is that on steroids, right? So, they said there were initial reports that the cause of the divorce had something to do with that they've been married 25 years. Him wanting a dog and Jennifer Flavin not wanting a dog. You and I have been married. You've been married for more than 10 years. I've been married for more than 10 years. This is not why, marriages end.
Because of a fight over a dog? No.
It's hard to believe. Maybe it's the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing, but that is certainly not the reason a couple that's been together for a quarter century breaks up. So Sly then came out and said, look, we were just going in different directions. I have the highest respect for Jennifer. I'll always love her. Now, the divorce documents are nasty.
Don't bespeak that. They don't bespeak for loving forever, right?
They really don't. I mean, you can file these things in a very vanilla way that it just says irreconcilable differences and let's split up our property.
I would say the vast majority of celebrity divorces come without any color at all. They're
vanilla.
Right, exactly.
This one said, on information and belief, Jennifer Flavin said in her documents, I think that Sly has been dissipating marital assets. That's a big no-no. It means that when things are rocky, Sly started moving accounts, selling assets, hiding things, putting them in other accounts that she couldn't access in the divorce.
Which, by the way, is illegal.
Very illegal.
And you can get in a lot of trouble for, but rich people I guess rich and poor people do this all the time. They see the divorce is coming, they start taking some resources out of their account and putting it into one person's account.
Yes, so she wanted an order from the court stopping him from doing this. Sly says, this is ridiculous. I haven't sold a thing. There is no dissipation of assets. Obviously, he's worth an inordinate amount of money, so this will be a very, very big breakup, unless they reconcile. There was some notion that they're trying to resolve it amicably. I think that actually means the marriage is over and they'll resolve everything privately, not a reconciliation, because something serious has happened with this marriage, right?
Yes. There was some large event.
You don't come back from the dog cover.
And it's not it's not okay for us to speculate, and it was, but marriages have trouble, and sometimes you fight over a dog, and sometimes you fight over other stuff. And this one looks like they fought over other stuff.
Now there's an element of it. They have 3 daughters. Yeah. All of them adults now.
Yes.
Now I've watched these kids grow up. They're like sort of a big feature of following Sly Stallone. What do you make of that? So they have no minor children. There's an element that some people stay in marriage just until the kids sort of have reached adult age, and then they say, "Look, we've done our job."
I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing. That's
a successful marriage.
I think we've met plenty of people who stay, or we're aware of plenty of people who stay together for the kids. The kids no longer need you in that same way anymore, and therefore it makes sense to go your separate ways. Typically, you don't cover their face with a dog tattoo when that happens. I think that's different. But I found one thing very fascinating was that Jennifer Flavin, right as leading up to this, posted that, I think on Instagram, a photo of herself and her 3 daughters saying something to the effect of, "It's just the 4 of us."
Yeah, these are my priority. The daughters all smiling. It looked like solidarity.
It looked like solidarity against Dad.
Yes, which was a very strange thing. If you follow him, he and his daughters are very close. They have a podcast. He always participates in it. He does nothing but celebrate their accomplishments and so forth. This was different. This was Jennifer sort of aligning the forces, and it's impossible to see that picture as not directed at Sly Stallone.
Certainly by him. We don't know when the photo was taken. It may have been taken before, during happier times, and she posted it as it really was a shot at him.
Yes.
If that photo was taken, the 4 of them together in the wake of Dad's tattoo gate, and then posted, it's a real problem for Sly. It looks like he's lost some favor with his kids.
It really does. I actually think it's the one misstep potentially by Jennifer. Look, divorces are very, very complicated. We know very little except for these sort of documents and what we're learning from sources. But I think weaponizing your children, even your adult children, against the other parent.
Depends what they've done.
It depends what they've done. You're right. Maybe it's okay, but it does seem nasty. It seems nasty because I think he has a close relationship with the daughters, so to sort of like pit them against each other seems rough. So we'll see where this plays out. This is a massive divorce, though. We haven't seen a breakup of this caliber in a while. I mean, Johnny and Amber, I guess, was a pretty big breakup.
Only because of the resulting lawsuit, not because of the divorce itself. They were far less famous than...
I didn't expect to see the dog cover up. You don't think of Sly doing something this nasty. Anyway.
2 more topics we want to get to pretty quickly here. Dennis Rodman reverses course, says he's not going to go to Russia to seek Brittney Griner's release. We thought this was weird when it came out because how is he getting authorization to go to Russia? He can't just go to Russia right now, number one. And number 2, what's he going to be able to do? Yeah,
the Biden administration said, look, if he goes, he's going in an unauthorized capacity. We have these very delicate negotiations going on. We certainly don't need Dennis Rodman messing with Vladimir Putin. When I read the story, so finally Dennis Rodman said, I'm trying to go this week.
First he said, I got permission.
Yes.
And I'm going this weekend or this week.
Then he tweeted yesterday, he's backing off. He will not be going to Russia. Right. I thought of this as an interesting, a couple years ago when the Trump administration is in power, I think this happens. I think Trump loves celebrity so much, he would have encouraged it. Hey, go over there and see what you can do. We'll go together. I think Trump might have gotten on a plane with him.
And Dennis Rodman went to North Korea during that same time, right?
Went to North Korea. What do you think of this? I think I actually have probably a different read than you think. I think Dennis Rodman is a bit of a clown, a lot of a clown.
Yeah.
And I think the negotiations with Putin are delicate. However, they've been ineffective to this point.
Yes.
And Brittney Griner is sitting in a Russian prison. And the Biden administration is saying, we're working on it, but nothing has come to pass. Some of the heat has passed and, the moment is fading. And unless it stays, the trial is over. Unless it stays in the public light, it's hard to get things done. There's not as much motivation burning under them. So I don't think he would have been effective, but I like that he has his heart in the right place. He wants to go over there and save the day. So what do you make of the Biden administration saying, hey, stay the hell out of it?
Yeah.
What harm could he have done is my question.
I don't think he could have done. It reminds me, taking back to another terribly tragic event, the murder of Natalie Holloway down in Aruba.
Yep.
And I remember the family at the time. If those who remember, it's got to be 20 years now, 15, 20 years now. A young girl was abducted. They had no idea where she had gone. She was on vacation in Aruba. Her parents hired not just private investigators to try and find it, didn't just, grease the wheels of the Aruban police. Mm-hmm. They also hired PR people to keep it in the news because they know as soon as these things fall out of the news, politicians under less pressure to enter into diplomacy to figure out what happened. Here it's the same way. The family of Brittney Griner, her wife and others, love the idea of Dennis Rodman making this a news story again just to keep people's eye on it because you're right.
Yes.
It had faded, right? We were so into it. And by the way, I think the Biden administration is probably doing what they can and what they should to get her out, which is a lot, but not everything, right? Are we really going to give it the merchant of death to get her?
Right.
That was the question. And
it's political nature not to have as much urgency when the public is pressuring you. I'm not blaming the Biden administration. That's just sort of how things work.
Yes. Yeah. And so he is keeping it in the limelight. So I think he's doing well on behalf of Brittney Griner. I don't think it's, but I do worry about, he's not going to be able to accomplish anything. And if he did, at what sort of cost of favor to Vladimir Putin?
I agree. Look, he can't make favor. He doesn't have much to offer Vladimir Putin in terms of real things that he can offer on behalf of the American government. He has no standing to do that. We wouldn't send Dennis Rodman. I just wonder what harm he could have done if he said, hey, maybe I'll play a couple games here, play in one-on-one. Would that do it? I don't think it'll do it at this point. They're in a big conflict, but sad to see that she's just languishing there. I really am.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Tell us why Joe Biden's student loan relief plan that he's put into place is so awful for Americans.
It's horrendous. I mean, Jason and I are going to be on the same page about this, but these loans are taken out not by force. You take out student loans, and there's a responsibility to pay them back. Many people do pay them back. There are already existing.
I had huge loans and paid them back.
Yeah, listen, and do you have to make some compromises, maybe to what you want to do first and foremost? Yeah, you have to be an adult. You have to be an adult and pay back your student loans. Some people do. Some people they're already available even without this. Deferral programs if you do something in the public sector, if you work for an NGO, there are available ways to kick the debt down the road and even forgive large portions of it that already exist. This is just a naked vote grab to me. This is the Democrats at their worst. The Republican Party is miserable right now, have a ton of problems, but this to me is like the worst of the worst, kind of peddling and sort of taking money from some people who have paid off their debt and just transferring it. This raw wealth transfer of, you forgive up to $20,000 for millions of borrowers. There are 48 million people who have student loan debt. This is a huge program.
Regardless, I know regardless
of need.
Regardless of need, there can be people who are from exceptionally wealthy families who are getting loan forgiveness right now. Now, there's a limit on the amount you can earn per year to get the forgiveness, but it doesn't account for any of your financial, your family wealth, or even your own personal wealth. If you've amassed a fortune, tens of millions of dollar fortune, but you happen to, at that moment, have devoted your life to charity or to giving back to others and make less than $125,000 a year, there's no means test there.
Yeah,
you still
bye-bye student loan debt.
Bye-bye student loan debt. And once again, as we were talking about in Vanessa Bryant, this is not from a pool of funds that doesn't have consequences. It's from a pool of funds that then have to be reimbursed.
That's right.
In this case, from loans largely from the Chinese government, or from loans from the American people in the form of bonds and in other ways that we loan money to the federal government.
Taxes,
all
bonds,
this is paid out to people regardless of need.
Yes.
Regardless of need.
And when these things are presented, I find they're always presented in that dishonest fashion because the cost of this program, it sounds wonderful, right? I mean, loan forgiveness, I'm not Scrooge about it. I'm not, it sounds...
And there are people who definitely need it. And by the way, if people have need for these kinds of things, or to your point, there are programs galore to get forgiveness, deferrals, anything you need.
My sister did Teach for America, had a bunch of deferral and forgiveness because she did something good.
Yes.
She went and taught in rural Mississippi. That's okay. You don't have to go to a law firm and pay off your dad, a big private law firm.
You and I took the easy way out. Your sister took a hard way. No, I'm serious.
That's right. That's right. But this just sort of no means test. Everyone knows what a means test means is, do you have the means to pay it back? And it's generally a sliding scale. To not have that in a loan forgiveness program opens this up to massive amounts of abuse in my mind. It won't be abuse, I guess is the wrong word, because you're allowed to do it under this program, but it's so thoughtless, such a blunt instrument, and it is such a naked way, transparent way to curry favor with voters that I have a distaste for it. I do.
Yeah, you are.
Do you?
I do. Not nearly the distaste you have, because it's just a level of Scrooginess that
I am the Scrooge of the office. Anyway.
All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you again tomorrow.
All right.
Bye.